I made the Amazing Digital Circus in Mario Odyssey, and today I'll be showing you exactly how I did it. Let's get into it. So when I started working on this project, I had one goal in my mind: take Mario Odyssey and transform it to make it feel like a crossover video game between Mario and the Amazing Digital Circus. My plan to realize all of this was to import all of the main characters of the Digital Circus in Mario Odyssey, make a new game layout, build some of the main places of the show, and finish off by creating some levels that would feature everything that I had built so far. Now with that said, the first thing I did was make the main character playable in my mod. To do so, I downloaded this incredible model of Pomni that I found online on this platform. Then I imported it in Blender and used some tools to transfer Mario's animations into Pomni's body. Quite quickly, I was able to get a fully animated and playable Pomni in Mario Odyssey. Now I want to quickly go over this, but I changed a little bit of the game layout to really give this sensation of the crossover game. First, on the loading screen, instead of seeing this classic image of the Switch Joy-Cons, we now see this image of Pomni and Caine. In the quick menu, I replaced Mario with Pomni and changed the Mario Odyssey logo in the top left corner with the Digital Circus 1. And yes, I know, seeing bald Pomni looks really cursed, but I guess it is what it is. But anyways, after finishing up Pomni and the layout, I decided to add all the other main characters from the show. But this time, instead of making them playable, I made them into NPCs, and honestly, it just made much more sense like that. I started by adding Caine, which I put over the NPC version of Luigi. I did that because in the Amazing Digital Circus, we always see Caine flying around in the air, and from what I've seen, Luigi is the only human-like NPC in Mario Odyssey that looks like he's just hovering in the air. And to be honest, I was super satisfied with how Caine looked in my mod. Now for the other main characters, I decided to put them all over the Cityman NPC from New Donk City because his animations were the most fitting for that purpose. I went ahead and added all the other 5 companions that are with Pomni in episode 1, as well as the princess from episode 2. Even though it took quite a while to make, it turned out to be all worth it because each NPC looked super great in game, and I was even able to customize how they would act. Also, I almost forgot to mention this, but I imported the little bubble in my mod by placing it over one of the Cap guys from the Cap Kingdom. Apart from the NPCs, I added certain monsters from the show, but we'll talk more about this later on in the video. So after making Pomni and the NPCs, I moved on to recreating this place of the show called the Grounds. Since I couldn't find any model online of the map, I realized that I would have to make it myself. It turned out to be way harder than I expected, but let me show you how I did it. First off, I took the ground from the Mushroom Kingdom as my base model since it almost had the same shape as the hub world from the Digital Circus. Even though they looked alike, I still changed a little bit of the Odyssey model by making this area with water on the same level as the grass so that it would look even more accurate. After that, I made the decoration of the map. I started by planting a ton of trees while also trying to keep their positioning accurate to the show. Then I placed this giant circus tent in the middle of the hub world where there would normally be Peach's castle. For the snow hills in the background, I ripped off these ones from New Super Mario Bros. Wii and placed them all around like this. Then I added this lighthouse and boat in the water section and finished by building this little amusement park next to the circus tent. This is a small detail, but I was even able to change some of the collision settings on certain models and made it so Pomni would bounce when jumping on a bouncy castle and slide when going down the pink slide. As a final little touch, I wanted to populate the hub world because otherwise it would have felt a little too empty. So as you can see, I placed a few different colored toads, some fishes in the water, and all other sorts of NPCs all around the map. And by the way, some of the toads had some really interesting things to say. But for real, you should subscribe because it helps out my channel a ton. Thank you. But yeah, just like that, the map was fully decorated in my mod. Here's the comparison between the original and mine. Let me know in the comments if you think I did a good job. Now let's move on to the most important place of the show, the inside of the circus tent. Just like for the hub world, I couldn't find a model online of the map, so I had to make it myself. And this time, I knew it was going to be a real challenge because there would just be a lot to do. I began my work by placing some black and white checkered floor and added the tent on top of it. Now inside the tent, the first thing I wanted to build was the theater stage. To do it, I gathered many different objects online that I modified a little bit in Blender and then imported them in Mario Odyssey. After that, I rearranged those objects in the level editor in a way that it would resemble the theater stage from the Amazing Digital Circus. After many hours of work, this is what I was able to come up with, and I was super satisfied with how it looked. To make the rest of the inside tent, I created a few different shapes like this cube or this cylinder and made one independent object of each shape in different colors. So for example, I had 8 different cube objects, each one having its own color. And well, I did the same thing for the cylinder, the triangle, and so on and so forth. Once all these shapes were imported in my mod, I was actually able to combine them together to make some really nice patterns. For example, if we look at this multicolored cube, it looks like it is its own object, but in reality, it's just many different colored cubes that are stacked on top of each other. Even though I didn't intend to fully and accurately recreate the map from the show, a lot of the things I built were inspired from it. So I've got these different stacks of cubes, these pillars with a base on top, this sort of castle with the different shapes, and many other things. After a few days of work, I came up with this final product and I was very much satisfied with how it turned out. Just like with the hub world, I decided to populate the map with NPCs and enemies. So for example, on the stage, I placed Pauline and her crew who are giving a music concert, or here I added this little volleyball court with the snails from the Sea World. I also placed a bunch of toads at random places and customized the message of some of them. And now that both of the maps were made, it was time to change the game environment to make it feel even more like I was in the digital circus. I started by replacing the coins with these cute little pillows that had an image of Pomni on them. After that, I replaced the coin ring with this checkered cube that upon collected would give Pomni 3 extra pillows. For the other collectibles, I replaced the heart with a Pomni hat and the grand heart with this giant head of a plushy Pomni. And speaking of plushy Pomni, I made one that you can actually collect just like you normally would with a power moon. Another cool thing I did was remixing the checkpoint. I made it so when it is not touched, we see a sad Pomni on a red background, but once we touch it, the background turns blue and Pomni becomes happy. Now for the enemies, I could only find one to add, and it was the glowings from episode 1. I picked many different enemies in Mario Odyssey and replaced each one of them with a different glowing from the show. So for example, I have the cube glowing that went over the Goomba, the bowling glowing over these little pop monsters, the star glowing over the Spiny, and you get the idea. For the bosses, I decided to add Kaufmo from episode 1 and these 3 reptiles that the main characters are chasing in episode 2. So for Kaufmo, I simply put him over Madame Brutal's chain chomp and actually removed Madame Brutal herself, because that way it would look like Kaufmo is free and having some sort of anger attack when he's chasing Pomni down, just like in the first episode of the show. Alright, so now for the reptiles, I first put Gumingo, the yellow one, over Rango and replaced his weapons with Gumingo's hat. I feel like it was the best choice to make because the Brutal's animations look perfect on him. And it was the same thing for Max, the blue one, which I put over Topper. Finally for Chad, I only put his head over the Bullet Bill. Now I know this might look strange right now, but don't worry, it's all gonna make sense very soon. But anyways, let's now move on to the best and final part of the project, making the gameplay. For this mod, I wanted to have some sort of storyline so that there would be an end goal when playing my mod. So the story starts with Pomni inside the hub world where all the characters have been captured inside of paintings. To rescue them, Pomni must go inside all the paintings that will send her to a different level each time where she would have to complete a unique objective. This is kinda similar to how characters are unlocked in Mario 64 DS, if you know what I mean. But anyways, in the first level, Pomni has to rescue Kane and all she has to do is find at least 5 moons that have hid inside the hub world and bring them to the Odyssey. Nothing complicated, just an easy start to the mod and a good showcase of the hub world. Also, this is another small detail, but I was able to change some of the moon names, which I think is pretty cool. In the second level, which takes place inside the tent, Pomni has to pick up all of Zubol's body parts, which are hidden all around the tent. Once Pomni finds them all and brings them inside this cooking pot, Zubol will be rescued. I call this level Gather the Body Parts because it was inspired from this scene in episode 1 where they play Gather the Groins and Zubol's body gets separated into different parts like this. Alright, now for the third level, I wanted to have my first boss fight. I made it so Pomni would have to fight Kaufmo inside of this dark cave in order to unlock everyone's favorite, Jax. Also, to spice things up, I added a few giant glowings in the battle arena that when touched would burn Pomni just like lava. For the fourth level, I simply went ahead and made a parkour / getting over it map where you would have to bounce on certain objects and make your way around to get to the top where you'd be able to rescue Gangol. After that, I made this maze in, I guess we can call it the void? Basically, Pomni would have to find 5 moon shards that I hid inside the maze. The twist is that it would be really hard to see because of all the clouds that I put, which were meant to represent the void from the show. Once all the moon shards are found, Pomni can exit the maze and rescue Kinger. Next up was another boss fight, and this time it would be to rescue Princess Lolilalu? I guess that's how you pronounce her name? Anyways, my first idea was to make Pomni fight 3 Brutals at once, and those Brutals would be the 3 reptiles from episode 2. The problem is that fighting the 3 at once would be way too chaotic and way too hard, so instead I cut down to 2 at once, Gomingo and Chad, and added a bullet bill blaster that would throw max heads throughout the battle. This way, it would be a way more fun, but still challenging battle. Finally, for the 7th and last level, I wanted to completely change things up and make a race level. I reused the Mario Kart track from my custom characters video and decorated it with a lot of Digital Circus objects like this cane statue or the other shapes from the inside tent. I was even able to turn some of them into obstacles that Pomni would have to avoid during the race. If Pomni is able to complete a full lap of the track in under 45 seconds, Ragara would then be rescued and all the characters would be brought back into the hub world to have a party together. But of course, Zubul would still be pissed. Now I need you guys to tell me, do you think I did a good job with this mod? Let me know in the comments, and whilst you're at it, go smash that subscribe button. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
Bye!